Hey, everybody. Before we begin the show, I wanted to give a shout out to our friends at PowerPool. PowerPool is a mining pool and is one of the most profitable for miners. So if you have one miner at home or a fleet of miners at scale, point your workers to PowerPool to enjoy the best payouts. PowerPool supports a number of algorithms, SHA-256 for Bitcoin, X11 for Dash, and others. And of course, we're focused and we care about the most, S-CRYPT for Litecoin, Dogecoin, and now Bell's Coin, merge mining. Pointing your workers to PowerPool is easy with its simple user interface, and the platform also has all the reporting available that your operation needs. Typically, PowerPool extends a low 1% pool fee. However, if you register with the 84 million link in the show notes, you will lock in a sub 1% pool fee, which is excellent. Cheers, happy mining. Hello, welcome to the 84 Million podcast. Today we're on episode number 39, and our guest is Zayn Kalyan, and we're going to talk about Luxxfolio. Before we do, though, let's introduce Zayn. Zayn is an investment banker and business development executive. He began his career in software engineering and ground-up development for financial startups. Zayn has been interested in Bitcoin and digital assets since 2014. He's currently the CEO of Hummingbird, W3 Capital, an active digital asset holding company with multiple investments in the crypto space. He is also partner at Altus Capital, and of course, he's the advisor to Luxxfolio. So Zayn, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. Excited to be here today.
Very glad to be here. And it sounds like four hours ago, as of this recording, you kind of had some news. So do you want to just share that before we roll?
Yeah, it's been very exciting. I think it's been something that we've been really working towards over the past couple months, and just very, very proud and honored to have the support of the Litecoin Foundation and having Charlie Lee and David Schwartz join the company as advisors. We Since the inception of Luxfolio, we've been in contact with the foundation. Really, the Litecoin Summit last year was actually probably one of the catalysts, and attending that summit was one of the catalysts. Hearing Charlie speak, talking to David, were really driving forces for us to found Luxfolio, and having their support and their commitment and their belief in what we're trying to build with Luxfolio is just really, we just feel very honored, and we think it's a first step as we continue to build this company. And it's exciting times. The market's, I think every day the market gets more and more exciting and hotter and hotter. And the drive towards decentralization, digital adoption of digital assets, we just couldn't be in a better space at the moment. So it's very exciting news, and we're really happy as this is the next step, and kind of as we continue to really build something much larger and work towards our vision.
Yeah, that's great. So that's awesome that Charlie and David are on board as advisors. Before we kind of get into the topic, maybe we can just hang out a little bit on the Litecoin Summit. I didn't know you were there last year. Did you speak? I don't think you.
No, so in 2024 we were attendees.
You were there.
We were in Nashville for the Bitcoin Summit, and
Very cool.
yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about that summit was attending Litecoin, which in 2024 was actually occurred before Bitcoin. And we were there for Hummingbird, which is our digital asset holding company. And we attended the Litecoin Summit, and it was really one of these moments where it felt like 2015, 2016 Bitcoin conference. It felt like still that cyberpunk movement. It still felt like cyberpunk movement. We were still in this place where you had true believers. You had people. There wasn't all this hype. There weren't a lot of tourists. There wasn't all this commercialization. These were true believers, the people who attend the Litecoin Summit last year and this year, and the community as a whole. You can just really get this feeling of people who really do see the vision of digital assets, blockchain, decentralization, and really the initial vision that was set out in Satoshi's paper, and then beyond that, what has been manifested in Litecoin and what Charlie Lee and David and Litecoin Foundation, the community as a whole, have worked towards. So that was really kind of that feeling got us really excited about Litecoin in general, made us much more bullish on it. We made some initial investments with Hummingbird, really built a good position in Litecoin over the past year between the last summit and this year's summit. And then at the beginning of this year, in January, February, we really started looking at setting up something like Lux and looking at a lot of the treasury companies that were out there, and obviously MicroStrategy kind of being one of the bigger ones, or kind of the pioneers in the space. And we're not necessarily, I don't necessarily believe that MicroStrategy is the perfect model. There's a lot of issues I have with MicroStrategy and the way that they operate. But as a whole, we did see the opportunity to build what we term Lux as is a financial services. It's a Litecoin financial services company. So we are a Litecoin treasury, but beyond that, we are an engine for growth in the Litecoin community. Bitcoin has become so large, it's kind of, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, but Bitcoin's become so big, and you have all of this focus on it as an asset. So there's so much ancillary investment in all the different projects around that. But Litecoin has kind of flown under the radar. While it is still one of call it the original altcoin, and has so much opportunity, doesn't have that kind of engine for growth. So that's where we see Luxxfolio, the opportunity for Luxxfolio is not only a treasury company, but also an engine for growth and really a treasury for the community.
Yeah. That's great stuff. And it was good meeting you this year at the summit. I didn't realize you were there last year. I was there too. And this year was great. Of course, you spoke. You kind of shared the idea of what Luxxfolio is all about. And I was glad to be there and meet you and some of your team kind of after you guys had your spot. So exciting stuff. I want to say you were one of your team members got the copy of 84 million too at the auction, the 84 million version of the BTC TKBR Litecoin edition.
Yeah. He's one of he's my partner. The three of us, we founded the company together. And he's been a big proponent of Litecoin for a long time. He's it was pretty exciting. I unfortunately had to leave before the auction, so he was just sending me pictures. But yeah, he was pretty excited about that.
That's very cool. Very cool. And all of that went to support, of course, the work of the foundation. So need to hear your ideas on that. Maybe before we go into Lux, just tell us a little bit about your entry into crypto over the years. What was your interest in maybe Bitcoin, Litecoin?
So I started my career as a software engineer. I was actually building it was a financial risk management platform for banks throughout the world, really focused on capital adequacy reporting and calculations. Sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but basically just calculating a bank's risk in their portfolio, across their portfolio, and then being able to report that to regulators and be used for the bank's internal management. But so I was very fortunate at the time in 2015. We were doing development. I was running our development office here in Vancouver. I had a bunch of powerful gaming computers, and I read a New York Times article about Bitcoin, and that was 2014. And I read the article, and I'm like, "Oh, this is pretty interesting." And I went on figured out what Slosh's pool was. I downloaded a node, so I'll set it all up and started mining. And I ran it for about a week and a half, and I ended up with roughly zero point 0.8 of a Bitcoin across the two computers I had running. But then I needed the computers for something, so I shut it all down, and that was the end of it. So on the back of that, 2006, like late 2016, early 2017, really started to kind of see Bitcoin really starting to move. That was kind of the next resurgence, and I went all in. I was fortunate at the time. I had exited the software company, and was looking at different projects, things to invest in. Went quite far down the road of starting a regulated, centralized exchange with a fiat on ramp in Canada. And unfortunately, we kind of hit the market at the wrong time, so kind of got a little tough. It was tough to finance and tough to keep it going, just given the regulatory environment alongside the kind of the turnover in early 2018, so of the market. So, but ever since then, I've been very interested in the space and made multiple investments. Altus Capital was a founding shareholder and instrumental founder, for that matter, of a fairly large Bitcoin miner in Canada. We were very large, or very early in a lot of other cryptocurrency companies, a lot of the exchanges in Canada as well, centralized exchanges that still exist to this day. So yeah, I've been both a builder and an investor in the space, and was fortunate to mine some Bitcoin very early. And yeah, it's always been a general interest of mine, and kind of my partner John and my partner Steezy and our other partner Tomic, we've been very fortunate to be able to have this opportunity to build something special in the space right now.
Very good. I like that your kind of your hands are in different components of the space. It's obviously you're sitting in an office, you're not in a regulatory environment, investment banking, but you've also mined. Like I love that. I think probably very few people, and you're not wearing a suit, but in suits, probably were doing Bitcoin mining. Now, granted, there probably were more that ended up there than maybe we know, but it's nice to see the contrast on both sides. That you kind of had a little sandbox time too before you launched what you're doing now. And speaking of Bitcoin, I did find it interesting in your presentation. You made an analogy about, and I've thought about this too over the years, that this beacon of freedom, Bitcoin is more like the empire now, or a tool of the empire, or at least maybe domesticated or being domesticated by empire. I'm not quoting you, but that was kind of what I got from it. Explain what you were talking about with that, and why you included that in the slides.
Yeah, I have to give credit to Byron Gilliam's Blockworks podcast or newsletter, because I'd read that empire analogy a couple weeks earlier, and then it was kind of funny because then I heard somebody else, it might have actually been Charlie or somebody else, use it on stage later that day, or the day before my presentation. So I think it's a well-worn analogy, but at the end of the day, I think it links back to that same experience we had in Nashville in 2024. It's just that feeling, like that almost goosebump feeling of like, this is what the original Bitcoin conferences used to feel like. And you go to the Bitcoin conference today, and I think that stage, I called it a circus or something like that. And it is, that's not to say that like we're not big believers. Like I'm still very long Bitcoin personally. I'm still a big believer in the Bitcoin movement. It's more just the idea that it's kind of, there's been this divergence from the message, right? From the original goal and the original vision. And decentralization really is the focus, and the use of Bitcoin as currency, the use of Bitcoins for payments, the use of Bitcoin in the real world, not just for kind of speculation. And that's kind of where Litecoin fills that void. And it isn't the empire, it's the people's money. Like that, to use Charlie's example there, I reuse Charlie's example there. It's silver. It's not gold. It's the money of the people. It's the money that people use to buy things. It's not. Gold, both are stores of value, and that's actually one of the things I love about Litecoin when you compare it to fiat currency. Is it is a store of value, but it's like silver in that respect too. It's something that you can use on a day-to-day basis. And Bitcoin is that as well, but Bitcoin is more of a store of value than it is currency in my mind.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's changed a lot, because once upon a time we were talking about buying coffee with our Bitcoin and point of sale and all, and I feel like so much of that has been lost. Now there are folks in Bitcoin working on those sort of things, but it's definitely been eclipsed by, Michael Saylor and these other larger names, the maximalists. And again, there might be varying definitions of that word. But the Bitcoin only folks, I should say, it does
The
seem
maxis, the maxis as a sense, yeah.
yeah, and I think it's something that's definitely changed. But I think on the ground, a lot of us are more cooperative than the folks that we are projected to see, I should say. I think the developers kind of hold hands, and there's a lot of that, and we're seeing that with Litecoin now, especially. And we can talk about that maybe a little bit later in the show. But it's exciting to see. But I do agree that we sort of embody in the Litecoin community kind of that ethos that once was very vibrant and strong and like the driving case of Bitcoin, but you almost don't even see it anymore. But I thought it was a good analogy. I think it's correct, for what that is worth. And where do you think we are in 2025 right now, just in the market? I'm not saying you need to give me some prediction. I'm just saying, where are we in crypto world? We started with freedom money. Now we're looking at different things, all these years later. What does the space look like to you?
Yeah, yeah. There was a slide I had in my presentation, and I often go back to this, is that since roughly 2017, I think we've gone through these series of seasons or series of speculative bubbles, right? And they've kind of been driven by a theme, like ICOs kind of being the first one, and that kind of falling into or that flew into NFTs and then DeFi. And at the end of the day, all of these things have been driven by speculation. And I'm sure if you looked at it, like I'm sure like the normie community or politicians, the Elizabeth Warrens of the world and the Bernie Sanders of the world would love to look at crypto and say, oh, it's all being used for money laundering. But I think they're missing the point. It's not all being used for money laundering. It's all being used for speculation. It's all being used for meme tokens and speculating on NFTs and DeFi and yielding. And the yielding even is all driven by speculation in itself. So it's like a vicious circle. And what I think stable coins, like you see this big focus on stable coins, especially with the passage of the Genius Act in the Senate, and you're going to see this shift that it's looking at digital assets in a completely different lens from a mainstream perspective. And that's going to be the driving thing that drives the average person on the street to get a crypto wallet and have that wallet or that decentralized wallet or centralized wallet for that matter, for the use case of actually paying for something and paying for a service online, probably to start, and that will evolve to paying for items in the physical world. And I think that's where we sit today, like from a call it market perspective or where the price of Bitcoin is today or where the price of Litecoin is today. I think the all of that will sort itself out. I think we've all been in this, or a lot of us have been in the space. Anyone listening to this podcast, I'm sure, has been in the space long enough to kind of know that we're to work with the ebbs and flows of where the market goes and where the price of Bitcoin is and where the price of all other digital assets are. But if you really, where I see the opportunity is we're at this inflection point where mainstream adoption is not only going to come from the financial services world, which is where I think you kind of saw the EFTs and the futures contracts and all these things kind of focus on, and that's all driven by speculation. Now you're starting to see stablecoin adoption, and stablecoin adoption is going to drive interest in crypto from the mainstream, and that's where you'll start to see this kind of flip into looking at what I really believe the focus will be on proof of work UXTO tokens from the main purpose that they are inherently scarce. I think their model is more aligned or more indicative of fiat currency in some ways than kind of the true utility token or the call it the utility token of like Ethereum and Solana and these tokens that are really backed the proof of work proof of stake tokens that are backed by a network. And that said, I think that the evolution, a lot of the work that's being done on Litecoin and Bitcoin for that matter today, like the LitVM project and the Bitcoin OS project, Bitcoin Computer and Litecoin Computer projects, all of those things are great things because I think they kind of the timing is perfect as we start to see this kind of turn back to UXTO. And I think with that, you're starting to see the decline of fiat currency is probably the wrong word, but you're starting to see pressure on the sovereign and pressure on currency, and you're seeing stores of value, whether it be gold or Bitcoin or Litecoin for that matter, starting to see this kind of focus and this turn, and people want to hedge against fiat currency and kind of all of the trouble that sovereigns have, big debt crises, war, conflict, all those things. We're going to be in a place where UXTO is going to be really at the forefront. I think that's if you have had to describe where crypto is today, we're in this inflection point, and I think stable coins are at the perfect point. Because yeah, stable coins are great. Like everyone can say, oh, stable coins are going to be good for the US dollar. They're going to really drive adoption of the US dollar and all those things. But I think what's even going to come from that is you're going to see a very big diversity of stablecoins again amongst a bunch of sovereigns. So it'll benefit the US at first, but then you're very going to quickly see other countries have stablecoin products, other companies launch stablecoin products and other sovereigns, and then that will flow into, okay, we're looking at stores of value, and that's where Litecoin as kind of true money or hard money or the actual ability to use a UXTO token for money will come back.
Yeah, well said. I think, I mean, I've used stables. I'm not like, I think there's a place for them in the world, and if we see it as maybe an onboarding tool, that's definitely valid. But again, hopefully it's not a central bank digital currency, but that's a form of stable, right? That'd be the worst variety. But even the free market versions of stable coins, they're still tethered to unsound money, right? So
exactly.
Litecoin is a digital asset that's of fixed supply. Bitcoin, same story with that. So I think, yes, there will be a flight. Maybe you taste crypto and then you fly to more of a secure, stable, time-tested, sound code, proof of work, all the things you're saying. And we have that with Litecoin. So Very, very good. Luxxfolio, you're betting the treasury on Luxxfolio. Or sorry. You're betting the treasury on Litecoin with or at Luxxfolio.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, maybe the too long didn't read form, and then we can go into the details.
Yeah, basically what it means is we raise money via equity issuances and we invest that money in, or sorry, we invest the fiat dollars that we raise in Litecoin, and then we leverage that Litecoin treasury to support the community through a number of different avenues. And that really is the too long don't read version. But what that means underneath the hood is we issue shares, use that money that we rate that from the shares we issue to buy Litecoin, and then we take that Litecoin and we have a very large treasury, or we're working towards a larger treasury, but we have a treasury today, and we continue to leverage that on an ongoing basis. And that works in a number of different ways. That can be direct investment in projects via Litecoin. That can be leveraging to create liquidity pools for different projects to be able to leverage as Litecoin adoption is driven. I'm sure maybe most people might have seen today the launch of the CBLTC product.
Yeah, we've been waiting for that.
Yeah, and many people can debate the merits of Base and Coinbase and all those things, and true decentralists probably will have their issues with it. But all that said, I think it's great for Litecoin at the end of the day. It's great for us too, because it's another avenue for us to be able to leverage our currents, or leverage our treasury, be able to generate a yield. And then for our shareholders, so the people who are buying our equity, it gives them the upside. So they're not just purely investing in Litecoin. And I'd say that there's two types of shareholders that buy Lux. There are shareholders who are, call it normies, or people who don't have any association with crypto, or they don't hold any crypto, or don't really understand it. But they do want exposure to it. And they want exposure in a way that they can hold it in their traditional stock account. And some people may argue, okay, well, I can do that with an ETF. And there's no Litecoin ETF today, but there will be very shortly, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly with that, it's that when you invest in a passive ETF, it's just that. There's not really any leverage on it. And yeah, there can be some yielding potentially in the future as different products become available, and there can be just some different ways of them to be able to kind of generate a delta, so some alpha. But with us, we are leveraging our treasury from day one, and we're active participants in the community. So we are providing value add on top, and a premium on top of the Litecoin we hold every day. And we're being able to generate yield on that. We're being able to provide liquidity. We're being able to invest in different projects. And that really gives our shareholders alpha. So to call it traditional shareholder, or the normie shareholder, the one who doesn't have any exposure to crypto, Lux is a great way to just get exposure to crypto in any way. You don't have to, it's super easy. You can buy it through your broker, you can buy it through your discount brokerage, you can buy it through your bank, you can hold it in your stock account, and you can ride the wave. But call it maybe the shareholder, the retail shareholder, or institutional shareholder who has a little bit more experience with crypto. Maybe they hold crypto personally, they hold Litecoin even. Really the opportunity is to be able to invest in a product that is leveraging the Litecoin that we have, and we're doing it on all fronts with direct relationships with people like the Litecoin Foundation and partners like Charlie and David, and being able to get exposure to some of the best projects, working with people like the Lithium guys, the Basic Swap Dex project. Like, there's so many great projects in the space, and we want to be at the forefront of being able to invest in those, being able to work with those parties, and also actively develop our own projects too. So it's not just a passive treasury. We are an active participant in the community. We're an active development company ourselves. And really that's kind of the differentiator between us and an ETF. And yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, again, we don't have any ETFs as of now. Canary was the first to file. We do have LTCN in the United States, which is Grayscale. Of course, they were at the summit as well. But the ETF is more like you're just buying a direct
proxy, a direct
amount.
Proxy.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a fixed supply based on how they're arranging their shares per Litecoin, but it's basically an indirect hold, right? Paper Litecoin, but they're not active with that. It's just reserve, and you buy it and sell it, and that's it.
Yeah.
So you're doing much more than that as a Litecoin treasury company, and you're the first Litecoin treasury company. And let me just say, it's LUXX in Canada and LUXFD over the counter. Is that right?
LUXFF
Okay, I had
over the
FD.
counter.
FF.
It
Okay.
used to be FT. Now it's FF.
Okay, so I was right. So we changed it. Good.
Yeah.
Good to note. LUXFF and then LUXX on the Canadian stock exchange. Um, but yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how you're participating in the community as you've just described. So I'd like to hear more about that if you could. You mentioned other products. I know
Yeah.
it might be
Yes.
early, but what do you have maybe on a roadmap, or what are you thinking about doing?
Yeah. I can't say a lot yet, I can't be too descriptive just because we have a couple things in the works, and as a public company, we do have to be careful with disclosure. But what I would say is that stablecoins are a big focus for us. And when I say stablecoins, I mean leveraging Litecoin as a stablecoin platform. So being able to, I think there's a lot of stablecoin products out there, but I think there's an opportunity for the Litecoin network to be a platform, or a blockchain or platform in itself that supports stablecoins. And we're working on some pretty interesting ideas there. Beyond that, we've been talking to a number of the parties I think I just mentioned, the LitVM team, the Basic SwapDex team, about some different creative ways that we can leverage our treasury. So as we continue to raise more money and grow our treasury and build more and invest in the community, we do want to look at specific projects that we could be strategic partners in. And it's early days. I can't talk about it too much, but what I can say is that we are talking to a lot of these teams, and we think that there's a lot of opportunity to be a big part of what we're working with them, including also the Litecoin computer guys as well. Um, Alongside that, I would say that we do have some what I'll call our internal skunk works. We do have a product that we are building internally, and I can't talk about it too much, but in the coming weeks and months, there'll be more information about that. And it's a product that we're actively developing ourselves. And I think it really does fit well with um, it'll be a very good supporter or platform for the community at the end of the day.
Okay, so possibly a stable coin. You're looking at possibly, and that would be on Litecoin.
On Litecoin, yeah.
All right. There's been discussions of that for a few years, and different folks, but we have not seen it yet. We've seen Wrapped as of last, I want to say November, and then again, just this
Today.
week, yeah,
Yeah.
today with Coinbase. So now we have two varieties of that. So that kind of came to fruition. But we do not have a stable coin on Litecoin, and that would be exciting to see that. So again, to me, it's adoption, right? So I'm not going to use wrap products. I mean, I'd rather have raw Litecoin, right? But some people who may not otherwise touch Litecoin but are in DeFi now have access to the wrapped variety. So I'm all for these things. Some, yes, in the community can be very critical, and they might have some principle that's sound, and I'm not going to argue with them, but I look at it as a good thing. More adoption is more adoption, and we want more adoption. So, and you guys are a part of that. So that's pretty exciting. What you're sharing.
It allows us, like, wrap products do also allow like in the interim, as until more products get built out and kind of the ecosystem becomes a little bit more mature, wrap products do allow us to generate a yield in the short term as well too, right? And that's kind of key to our ethos, key to the return that we have to provide investors. So to say that we're going to be a big proponent or use wrap products on a large scale in the short term would probably be a little bit premature, but definitely there is probably going to be an element of that for us to be able to leverage.
Very good. I know you've been involved with other cryptocurrencies as well, but like, let's say versus Bitcoin or Ethereum, clearly you're very convicted with Litecoin. I mean, this is obvious. But maybe if you could unpack some of the reasons why you're so convicted about Litecoin, I think we'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the general ethos of the benefit. To be honest, it probably goes back to the general ethos of the benefits of Bitcoin, right? It's like this very pure what's the word I'm looking for? Instance or existence of a digital asset. One, it is a store of value at its root. It's designed that way. It's inherently scarce. But when you look at Litecoin specifically, Litecoin improves on Bitcoin in so many ways. And I think those are the things that make us so bullish on it. And then beyond that is the fact that it is we believe is significantly undervalued when you look at kind of Bitcoin, and when you look at Bitcoin, then you look at the benefits that Litecoin has. It was a very fair launch. It was probably the fairest launch of any cryptocurrency, you could argue. Like, even looking at like the proof of stake tokens all have their own issues, and they are, for the lack of better word, they all started as startups. Litecoin did not start as a startup. Litecoin was it was a currency. It was a store of value. It was like silver. It was like gold from the very beginning. And that to us is just so it's so core. So that would be one. Two, obviously the fact that it has 100% uptime. It's had 100% uptime its entire lifespan. We think that's, like, again, sound money, hard money, differentiation from a lot of things. I think it's key. I think the community has always been was probably a big driver. That was probably one of the biggest drivers. You just have this it's probably because the community is smaller, and but that's not to say that I don't think the principles of the community won't extend beyond that. So you have a very pure community. I think that in itself, just everyone's they're true believers of decentralization. And I think it's interesting because you have Litecoin kind of coming into itself at a point in adoption of digital assets where that in itself is differentiating. Like, it's not in Bitcoin, no one knew where Bitcoin was going to go.
Yeah.
And with Litecoin, you now have this well-trodden path of a number of different projects that have come from behind and built much larger market caps and built much more adoption. But Litecoin is really coming into itself at a time where you have a lot of mature digital assets. And its kind of idea of being the nice currency or the people's currency in that framework, it just makes the community so much more special because it's not corrupt at this stage, and it is more pure. And I think that's really kind of exciting to us. I think the way Charlie's approached Litecoin from day one, and through the years, I think is a big thing that's driven us towards it. Like, having a founder that is so bullish on it, but has approached the currency so fairly, and been such a big part of the community to this date. I think that also is really, really special to us, and that's one of the big drivers. And then a lot of the things, like Litecoin is innovative, right? Like MWeb, it's pretty exciting. Like, I think it's flown under the radar for a little bit. I think it's still under the radar. I don't think that people really realize the true power of what MWeb can provide to the market. And I don't think even the Bitcoin maxis really even realize that. So I think that's particularly special to us. I think MWeb and adoption of MWeb, as that grows and as that kind of starts to come to the forefront, and hopefully as we start to see Litecoin really start to grow and get a lot more mainstream adoption, people will really start to realize the value there as well.
So you believe Litecoin is undervalued? I think I'm, of course, agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Are you able to go out on a limb and maybe share some projection, or where do you think this is going? I know this is tough. It's a horrible question. But obviously, you're considering this because you're having investors. You have to model that to a degree.
I think I said on stage what it would be is somewhere between $10,000 and $100,000 Litecoin on $1 million Bitcoin. So $10,000 Litecoin, I think, is a very clear reality, or is a highly likely reality in the next 12 to 18 months. That's probably my conservative way of approaching it. Yeah, that's probably what I'd say.
Yeah, and the whole Bitcoin hits $1 million a year. That's always been kind of something that we've had fun with, whether it was McAfee, may he rest in peace, or the Kathy Woods approach. Oh, it's going to be 2030 or 35, I think she said. But yeah, many people are convinced that's going to happen too.
Well, Sailor would tell you it's going to be $1 million.
Well, now it's 21 million, right?
21 million, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but what I would also say with Litecoin too is I don't necessarily think that $10,000 Litecoin requires $1 million Bitcoin either. I just think that that's something. It's kind of that everyone loves to make that comparison, and I think obviously the market's traded that way, and Litecoin and Bitcoin have traded so closely. To say that there is not a possible divergence and Litecoin starts to really break out and get and kind of diverge from that kind of consistent trading, I think that is a reality. I think that's a possibility for sure.
Yeah. I appreciate you answering that. Do you think your kind of pioneering work here as a Litecoin treasury company, the first one. Do you think this is going to ripple out and maybe you see some other folks crop up that are doing similar things?
I think so for sure. Like obviously, I would be remiss to say that if they don't, that's probably not a good thing in the sense that Litecoin adoption is not happening. So I think it probably will happen. I think that it's all just going to be about like I support all that, right? Like the more adoption, the more companies that enter the space, we want that. Like if you look at the Bitcoin treasury, it seems like every micro cap US listed stock these days is adopting on Bitcoin treasury. So I think you're going to start to see we'll start to see this shift to look at different altcoins, and I think that UXTO tokens are going to really see a lot of are going to see a big kind of bull run here in the short term, and that's going to be pretty positive for Litecoin in general.
Yeah, yeah. I think proof of work is very strong and seems to be becoming sort of more rare. New projects aren't wanting to launch proof of work. Some do. In fact, we have some friends in the merge mining with S-CRYPT. They're all proof of work, of course.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to see the value of the UTXO model, proof of work. All of these original principles will come back to the fore, I believe, just in a matter of time, because they were set up for a reason, and it was
well. If you look at the dominant
contrast.
Yeah, and if you look at the dominance of Bitcoin too, right? Like that's also kind of proven that out in a lot of ways. Um, the staying power of Doge even as well. What I would say, like I like to say that like I don't believe in utility coins is probably not the truth. Like utility tokens and proof of stake networks, Solana, like but I think those are great. They are great pieces of a very diverse set of blockchains that are necessary for full decentralization. I think they both have places. Like you imagine that like a true decentralized application. I often use Uber as an example, where you have an Uber token that you basically leverage to be able to use do ride sharing effectively. That token needs to be exchanged to something at some point because it's just a utility token. And what that's exchanged to could be fiat currency, or logically it's thought the fiat currency could be Bitcoin, it could be Litecoin. But Bitcoin and Litecoin are interesting because they're more like currency, whereas the Uber token that exists, even whether it's on Ethereum, like you're using Ethereum and Solana for gas on those networks, the Uber token itself, the Ethereum and gas are just utilities to be able to leverage that token. The Uber token itself is pure utility as well. So their value is only based on the size of their network, whereas Bitcoin and Ethereum are stores of value, and they will be things that you would transact your Uber token to be able to then go transact it to another utility token or buy something else.
Yeah, I think those kind of native tokens are more like reward systems or whatever, which exists in the fiat world too. I mean, you can go to a grocery store or a coffee shop and get points in their own little ecosystem. It's kind of the same thing. It's not money. It's functional, but it's not money.
Yeah,
and I think
it's not money.
And I think very few things in crypto, with our 20,000 cryptocurrencies or whatever it is now, I don't check anymore. Very few are designed to be money. Of course, you have the privacy coins, you have Bitcoin, you have Litecoin. But there are very few that are actually money. And I think Litecoin's done a great job embracing what it takes at the protocol level to be the most sound as possible, right? So I'm
and
usable
as well. Usable, I think, being a big piece of that as well.
That is a big piece, and that should always be a piece that drives us forward to get a better user experience, right? And we're seeing that, but hey, in 5 years, it's going to look a lot different. So this is great. Mining. You mentioned an oppressor recently that you're possibly looking at Luxxfolio, exploring mining possibilities. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah. So we have a pretty strong background in mining across our team, both from the finance and operational side. We have some really great relationships and access, not only on the hardware, but also on the call it power and ability to find a kind of get cheap power and build a site out that is competitive and efficient. So we are exploring that. I think it's to say it might be a little premature to say that we've kind of made some decisions. I think from our perspective, our focus is on building our treasury and leveraging that treasury as much as we can. We are going to be doing a financing in the very near future. On the back of that financing, we'll look strategically at how we want to deploy that capital. But building our treasury at the outset is core to that, and making that really the core piece of what we do. But what I would say is to extend that, we will then look at mining opportunities. And I think mining is just, I think mining is also having a little bit of a renaissance. I think that for a long time it was kind of, it was tough, right? And I think it's become such a, like, the cost of power and all of the inputs, and then having to sell the underlying asset for fiat so you can pay your bills.
Yeah.
All of those things have just made it a very tough business. So I think we don't want to get too stuck in that trap, but if we can we are talking to some parties and we have some access to some cheap power, and if we can build a really efficient operation, then we'll move forward with that and invest in that. And I think that just further cements our support of the community at the root level by building a node and being a big piece of that.
Yeah. And I would imagine if you're mining it, that could contribute to your treasury, of course.
100%.
I don't know. I mean, there's different ways you could play a mine, but
We want to mine on a net positive basis, obviously, but all that net profit remaining in Litecoin at the end of the day is the goal.
Yep. Yep. In terms of you're custodying Litecoin on the behalf of your investors. We're not going to go into details of what that looks like. I understand you have limitations, but I guess the principle of custody for you as Luxxfolio, what do you think is important there to make sure that your investors...
Big believers in self-custody. I think self-custody is key to the entire idea of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and whether it be Bitcoin, Litecoin, etc. Like self-custody, and we live in a world where the market has evolved so much that now we're in a place where self-custody can be a reality for the average person. I think when Bitcoin first started, it was very tough, right? Like the tools weren't there and you needed fiat on-ramps and you needed all these things. But I think we exist in a world today where self-custody can be a reality. And yeah, it's not to say it's perfect. It's not to say there's not challenges, and not to say that every digital wallet out there has solved the problem and that there's not risks and issues. But I do think that self-custody is key, and we want to live in a world where everyone is their own custodian of all of their money, of their wealth at the end of the day. Like that's the dream, that's the vision. So to get there, we have to practice what we preach at the end of the day. And we are big proponents of self-custody. And I'm not going to go in too much detail beyond that. But what I'd say is self-custody is core to our beliefs and ideals. Foundation.
So what does, I agree with you, by the way, very much. Self-custody is paramount, and not your keys, not your coins. I don't know who listens, right? So sometimes we assume everyone's been here forever, and but for those of you who may be listening or watching that are having holding your cryptocurrency on exchanges, that is a way to do it. That is valid. There's nothing wrong with it, but there are risks that come with it, and please research what self-custody means. It's an original principle here, and we do need to continue to exercise that.
I think as
we move forward.
I think it's the principle. I think it's the core thing that makes decentralized. It's not decentralized if it's not the self. That would be how I put it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. This is good. We talked about how to find your tickers. Where do we find you? Where do we learn more about Luxxfolio? You have reports, I'd imagine, that you're publishing for investors.
Yeah, so you can find more about us online, luxxfolio.com. Luxxfolio H is our X Twitter handle. I think we have links to all of our other socials there as well. My X handle is Philly Jevs, PhillYJevs. And yeah, you can find us on X. It's probably the best place to get the most information. Our filings are all on CDAR, which is the Canadian version of Edgar. I believe we also probably have some filings on Edgar as well. And then the CSE, which is Canadian Stock Exchange, and the OTC markets websites as well. There's the links all over the internet.
Any final thoughts before we close out today?
No, I think this has been great. I really appreciated the conversation. I think it's all, like this is some of the stuff that I'm most passionate about. So it's always exciting to talk about this. I think it's a very exciting time for Lux. It was really kind of a nice coincidence that we had that news today with Charlie and David at the same time we were recording this. So pretty happy about that. And yeah, I would just encourage everyone to kind of keep an eye on what we do. And really, at the end of the day, I love your podcast. We love everything you do for the community, and really appreciate kind of spreading the awareness and providing this forum for us as well.
Good deal. We've been glad to have you. I'm glad this happened. We've had other folks ask us to have you on. Of course, we saw you at the foundation, or sorry, the summit put on by the foundation. So it's nice to sit with you today. And I can say, yes, folks, follow these guys on Twitter, X, Twitter. As far as I can tell, the intern is running the show there too. But I guess more will be revealed on that, on who's tweeting at Luxxfolio H. But no, it's been a pleasure, Zayn. It's great. This is not an endorsement, but you're a part of the community. I think it's exciting what you're doing. This isn't financial advice, of course, all that stuff. But we're glad that you took the time today to come on the 84 Million podcast. Of course, everybody listening, thank you for tuning in. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on X. Of course, you can find this podcast and every other podcast at 84million.com/podcast. Zayn will be following you, continuing to follow you, and looking forward to seeing kind of the announcements as they flow. And congratulations again on the backing of Charlie and David and kind of that push from the foundation. That's really great news.
Appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good evening, sir. Thanks for coming on.
You as well.